Hello, Jen Gerson.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine. I
You
guess I'm
sound
fine.
less sick than you've been.
I'm still a little, recovering. They gave me an inhaler, which is good. My doctor
Okay.
sent me for x-rays. Apparently, I do not have pneumonia, so that's good. I'm still wheezy. I don't know. I guess I went to my doctor and I was like, is this just my life now? And he was like, could be. This could be your life now. Okay.
Uh, what will be interesting to see is the next time you're traveling, or even when the seasons change in Alberta, if any of this is just weather related.
I mean, our weather is cold and beautiful.
Our weather in Toronto has been nuts. 21
Yeah.
degrees, -7. Like it's,
Yeah, well, we went from like 21 degrees to minus 20.
yeah, it's all over the place.
I know.
Tis the season. I got to be honest with you. I'm completely exhausted. I picked up an extra freelance assignment this week that kept me just wiped Monday to Wednesday. I want to start by mentioning it's funny. You write about one topic for a long, long time, and all of a sudden, like a story breaks on that, and you don't immediately comment, and people are like, "Gurney, where the hell are you?" Really interesting developments on the gun control file, and people have been all over me wanting to know why I haven't said anything about it yet. They want to know why I'm not talking about it on my Sirius XM show. They want to know why I haven't written about it here. The honest answer to anyone who cares is that I've just been too busy. I picked up some freelance contracts. It's a good time of the year to pick up extra freelance contracts because just as all those holiday bills are arriving, so are my checks.
Mm-hmm.
It's a happy circle of life thing.
I've got into like vintage reselling. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah. So let me tell you what is happening on the gun front, and then let me
Yes.
tell you
I
what
want to
I.
hear the Macaroni rage on guns. That's what we're here for.
I'm
Here,
gonna
excuse me,
skip.
this is the point where I put my sunglasses
Yeah,
on.
I'm gonna
Go
skip the
for it.
rage for now,
Oh, okay.
but I'm gonna tell you the confusion. So what has happened, and this I'm laying this out as factually as I can. Early 2020, there is the arson and shooting spree in Nova Scotia.
Hmm.
Immediately thereafter, and this is subject to controversy because of the Brenda Lucki teleconference, but immediately thereafter, the federal government announces an order in council, which is an executive order through the cabinet to ban, they call it 1,500 models of assault style rifles. Now, it wasn't 1,500 models, and I know this is such a detail finicky thing. You know how if you buy a car, there's like four different like trims you can get it in.
Hmm.
Imagine the federal government banned the Honda Civic and then claimed it banned three cars because it had banned the basic model, the elite model, and the mid range model. That's
Sure.
kind of what it was doing. But okay, so it said these are banned, and we will eventually write legislation to take this executive order and put it into law. That's what they've been doing. It's Bill C-21. It was proposed and went through the first reading in the House. I already jumped on something here. We talked about it in one of the podcasts, and I think we even touched on it in one of the dispatches here. There was language in the in Bill C-21 that seems sloppy to me, and I remember saying to you, "This is either a mistake or they are dramatically overhauling our gun control system," because they said any firearm that had a magazine of more than 5 rounds would be banned. So many firearms have a magazine of more than 5 rounds. What they don't all have are the so-called detachable magazines. You know, in movies when like the hero like clicks out a magazine,
Hmm.
slaps in a new one, that's a detachable magazine. Some firearms just have internal magazines. I thought that original legislation was sloppy, and I didn't really know what they were doing with it. And to be honest with you, I kind of assumed, well, they probably screwed that up, and what they'll do is they'll clean it up later. And then I got distracted by POEC and a bunch of other things. In recent days, while the prime minister and his cabinet ministers have been testifying at POEC, when all of Ottawa's attention was on that, the committee that is reviewing Bill C-21 brought in many hundreds of pages of amendments that would functionally ban completely semi-automatic rifles in Canada if they have a detachable magazine. I know that's a lot of terminology to throw at people, so let me just give you the bottom line. This would ban thousands, hundreds at least, probably thousands of kinds of rifles that would, in private hands already, I'd have to guess a little bit here, but I'm saying we're getting easily up into the millions of individual firearms. This would be hands down the most dramatic change in our gun control since the 1990s. Okay. Okay, that's me just trying to be as objective about this as I can. I think a lot of what they're proposing is stupid, but that's the facts of it. Let me tell you why this kicked off my political spidey sense. Just as a politics watcher here, I don't think they meant to do this, or at least they didn't think it through. Something I have written about with these liberals many times on gun control issues is that they will make a small incremental change and then they'll spend weeks shouting it from the rooftops. We have transformed gun control. These guys, and it's not just the gun control file, they are classic purveyors of the very small deliverable, massive marketing campaign.
Yeah, these guys are pretty much all marketing and always have been.
This is the opposite, where what they have proposed with this amendment, and by the way, they have NDP and Bloc support. They do have the votes to push this through. This is a massive transformative change, and they're not saying anything about it. And then when it finally got noticed, the Conservatives noticed it and began publicizing it. And that's, I think about half the Conservative caucus privately DM me the amendments. And I just had to tell them, guys, I'm busy. I'm on POAC. I will look at this when I get a chance. And I think most of the Ottawa media was really slow on this. So this actually happened last week. I didn't start to see any mainstream stories about it until this week. The Liberals haven't said anything. And when it began to come out, they've been denying it. And I know this might shock listeners to hear that the Liberals would ever lie, but they've been lying through their teeth here. This is so wildly off their normal approach to gun control. I think one of two things is happening, and I don't know which one it is. One, this blew up in their face in a way they weren't expecting, and they regret doing it, and now they're trying to figure out a way to get out of it. Two, somebody screwed up. And I honestly...
And they probably don't even realize that they've screwed up yet.
I think they're starting to figure it out, because here's one of the wild cards. Among the rifles they have now banned, which, by the way, have a lot of these rifles, they keep talking about military-style assault weapons. Military, I don't even remember the term. They basically had to make up a term to try and like market what they're doing here.
Yeah.
What they've proposed goes wildly beyond any defensible definition of this. And they keep saying, we're not targeting hunters and farmers. No, they definitely are. And they might not have meant to, and they might not even realize that they are.
Well, what do you mean by targeting that? Just because they're taking away the guns that hunters and farmers own doesn't necessarily mean that they're going after hunters and farmers.
It just happens to be a direct hit on them, collateral damage.
Right, exactly. Now they may be shooting for the sky and it hits the farmers, but that doesn't mean they're targeting farmers.
Well, ultimately, let me phrase it this way. The farmers and the hunters will be affected by what's being proposed here massively. And one of the things, Jen, and tell me that this is not going to be damaging for the Liberal brand. You want to know some of the people in the country who will be the most directly affected by this? Indigenous Canadians.
Oops.
The kind of rifles and shotguns that will be affected by this are ubiquitous on reserves.
Oopsies.
And so, you know,
it almost looks like you shouldn't legislate on the gun file without knowing anything about guns.
One of the, you want to know why the politics of this is so strange to me?
Tell me.
Aaron O'Toole might have had a real shot at being prime minister if the Liberals hadn't beautifully wedged him on guns. I think that's maybe a little too simple. But what the Liberals did on guns was, at the very least, and even senior Conservatives have told me this, I don't think it beat us, but it stole our momentum. And we had like 2 weeks left to seal the deal with the 905. And we wasted 3 or 4 days over Labor Day 2021 on the defense, and we never got our mojo back. Okay. What I am wondering, and I don't know this for sure, is whether or not the Liberals have just done the best thing they ever could have done for Pierre Poilievre. because the conservatives, I know they're thinking about this. I've talked to some of them about this. I've been picking their brains on this, trying to get the scuttlebutt as we do. And they were telling me they didn't know what to do with guns. How do you have a policy that is desirable to the gun voters in this country and not alienate the 905? That's a really tough one. Tough politics, hard problem to
you
solve.
talk to some First Nations people who have, treaty rights to hunt,
Or
and you show them that the federal government's going to take away the gun that I've been using to
feed my
hunt
family.
off the feed my family for umpteen generations.
Or you know what you do now? Now, because of
What?
this, nothing. You don't say a word. Pierre Poilievre doesn't have to say boo on guns for the next 3 years, because every gun owner in this country, every one of the different groups of gun owners, because you've got your target shooters, you've got your military, like historical collectors, which is actually me. I own like old World War vintage firearms.
And then you've got my dad.
You got your dad. You've got Indigenous Canadians. You've got hunters, like people who like to go out and take care of ducks. You've got skeet shooters. These are disparate groups of people. They've got a common enemy now.
Well, they always did, though.
Not really. To an extent, I think people would be surprised by. There have been divisions in the gun community. A lot of the ones who have had no interest in handguns or kind of more military style weapons. Here I am using that liberal term, but
look, all I know is that my dad keeps on like getting angry at me and calling me a liberal. You know what I mean? Like, oh, have you gotten over your love of the liberals yet? I'm just like,
that's what you're known for, Jen. Your love of the liberals.
Yeah.
So like hunters, like just pure duck hunters, deer hunters, have sometimes been uncomfortable getting linked to like the handgun target pistol guys. Oh no, that's not us. We just leave us our shotguns here. It's a united front now. And one other thing, the conservatives now have a really good argument to make to any of their voters who've trickled over to the PPC. A vote for Max is a vote for a gun ban. PPC voters are big into gun rights. The only way to block this now is to come back on home. That's going to be the conservative argument. They don't need to talk about this in the 905.
I guess, but I don't know. I still sort of think that gun owners are such a marginal group in the country that like, and they're already so overwhelmingly conservative that there's not a lot of political win here.
I don't think the conservatives are going to add millions of new voters to their coalition based on this. I agree with you. There's just not that many. But Pierre Poilievre just doesn't need to talk about it. He doesn't need to give Trudeau any, no pun intended, ammunition.
Yeah, and also he come the next election, he just basically needs to say, "Look, you want to claim credibility on the gun file. You completely botched this."
I think
you guys couldn't tell the difference between a military assault rifle and like a 80-year-old skeet shooter. You have so much ignorance on this file. You wouldn't know what to ban if it came up and hit you on the ass, figuratively or literally.
After the long gun registry blew up in the liberals' face in the 90s, 2000s, they got real gun shy. No, all these puns are terrible. I swear to God, I'm not trying to do this deliberately. They got really timid around gun control issues for about 10, 15 years. I have been thinking for a while, and I've talked to some pollsters about this, that the gun issue has been about as useful to the liberals as it's going to be. There's not, like, as you said, there's not a ton more conservatives who will be created by gun issues. I also don't think there's a lot of voters left for the liberals who are one tweak to the Firearms Act away from going, Trudeau's my guy. Yeah. I tend to think both sides have kind of maxed that out.
No, the real benefit to the liberals is making people scared that the federal conservatives are going to, flood the streets with legal semi-automatic guns.
People are already not voting liberal. I think this is down, and I think it could work, but let me tell you what I think this is. For the liberals, this is now a defensive strategy. This is hold the 905. This is hold Toronto.
And well, that belies your theory that this is just an accident.
This might be an accident. The overall strategy is defensive. Okay. And it is not about winning new voters. It is about keeping the 905 moms voting Liberal. And something
keep the line at 32%. That's
all they need.
Hold the line.
And I think we've talked about, we've written about this quite a bit. If they lose 1% of that, they're done.
Yeah.
And
spectacularly done.
Yeah. And that's what people don't understand. I just don't know at a certain point. And it's funny, both Liberals and Conservatives I've spoken to about this have agreed the Liberals will eventually take too many trips to the well on the firearms issue. And they will try something and there will be no further benefit that they can accrue from it. And it will piss off new voters who will be angry at them. And there will finally come that time when the Liberals will try something on guns and it will be a net negative for them, even if it's just a tiny one. Mm-hmm. Way too early for me to say this. I wonder if this was that trip.
That's an interesting question to ask.
Was this that last trip to the well? They could have left it at that stupid handgun freeze. They could have left it with the military style assault rifles, and they would have had more than enough to go into the next election with. But now they try this either deliberately or they fuck it up. I don't know which one it is. And now they've actually created more problems than they've solved. So there are rumors buzzing, and I'm totally telling you, I do not know if I can verify this at all. I am hearing from multiple channels through multiple parties that the Liberals are now realizing they need to find some way to back out of this. I don't know. We will see. But what fascinates me about this one, Jen, this is the first time they have over-delivered and
under-promised. Yeah.
It just the mere fact that they're doing that is fascinating to me. It's the biggest tell these guys have. The smaller announcement, the bigger the marketing with these guys.
John, that's your lead on this one, by the way. That's totally your lead on this particular dispatch.
John Ivison, my buddy in the National Post, had a great it made me giggle this week. He's writing about the Liberals' new Indo-Pacific strategy. Mm-hmm. And he says it has much to be modest about. And
it's a good line.
And this is sort of kind of the opposite of that, right? It's like, and again, whatever you think of the gun issue, Jen, and I know you think I'm the weird gun bunny here. You're more moderate on this than I am, but I'm sorry. I hope I don't get you.
I just want to make sure that, I can have a gun in my basement for when the hordes come from the ravine and I need to protect my children.
Okay. Legally speaking, you can't, but you can be a military collector.
Okay. So, but by the time we get to that, there will be no Canadian state to prosecute me. So you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I think I just find
people, if you're listening to me on the podcast here, I'm smiling knowingly because Matt knows that I'm kidding. So there you go.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, we're kidding.
I don't actually have like a prepper arsenal in my basement. Now I can.
Wink.
Wink.
When it comes to this, I just find it super, super interesting. And what it makes me, like I said, is this that trip to the well too many here? And I also just get the feeling that we do have the L'École Polytechnique anniversary coming up, and I don't think the Liberals are going to try and rock the boat before that. But I noted something today. We're recording this on Thursday because I'm out of town this weekend for a family event. On Thursday, the Liberal Party had a tweet like we're getting guns off the street, blah blah blah, and they're using all the old definitions. So as recently as Thursday, they're like, we took 1,500 kinds of rifle off the street. Well, actually, their amendment would take thousands more, but they're still using the old number. And it's so. Is this the liberal left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing?
This is just they don't actually understand the file well enough to know what they're banning, and they fucked up. That's 100% what policy. It is. Yeah.
And the final point I'll make, and then I'll shut up about guns. These are the guys who want to police misinformation and disinformation on the internet. They are lying to you, the Canadian people.
And they do frequently.
Folks, I am way out on the weird fringe on Canadian politics on guns. I get it. Most of you are not going to view this issue the way that I do. But can I at least ask that we care that the government is lying to us? And even if you support what they're doing, can I at least ask you to join me in wishing that they would be honest about it?
No, because nothing matters anymore, Matt. Just look at my eyes, staring into the abyss.
The dead-eyed stare.
Wednesday Addams.
So next on the list, let's go alternating here. I got one I want to throw at you here. Why don't you tell me about assisted dying?
Yeah, I know this is something that you and I have sort of watched. It hasn't really been our wheelhouse, but bluntly, I think it should be our wheelhouse more often because we know that the government is looking at expanding assisted dying to people with mental illness. You would count me among the group of people who are getting increasingly uncomfortable with where assisted dying is in the culture, even though I would have initially supported it. To me, there's a pretty big difference between someone in their 80s or 90s with terminal cancer ending their lives peacefully and at their own sort of will and discretion, and someone ending their lives because they're depressed. Sorry, I do think that there is a line that we're crossing there that is a really hard one to uncross, and I don't want to get into philosophical arguments about the nature of suffering. Like, to me, it's a very clear difference in type and kind and suffering, and when you're talking about mental illness, it is simply impossible to know whether or not someone can recover from even severe mental illness. Like, that is unknowable. Whereas, because mental illness in and of itself is a very interesting and nebulous concept. Whereas if someone has terminal cancer, we can be pretty fucking sure. You know what I mean? Like, or if someone's 98 and has a terminal, we could be fairly confident. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you'd go to Vegas on those odds. You know what I mean? So I think these are two very, very different things, in fact, and objectively, and I think they're very, very different things philosophically. So anyway, as a result, I do think that it's worthwhile for us making this a little bit more our wheelhouse and being a bit more skeptical about this. Sorry, my kids are just coming home. So two things came out this week that really got some attention in the US, particularly. One is Simons, the home and fast fashion brand out of Montreal, did this totally bizarre and extremely uncomfortable video where there was a woman who was all clearly terminally ill and had sort of narrated this thing. And it was actually quite a beautiful commercial in some ways, where she was talking about, you can find beauty in your last moments and blah, 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 blah. And, here's my
cute... selling like euthanasia
yes clothes? Well, we're not selling euthanasia clothes, but I'm like, you're selling fast fashion. Like, look at the cute chunky hat on that cancer victim. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, it's not that the commercial itself contained was anything wrong with it, but it was being used to sell clothes and home goods. Like, that's fucked up. And there's something about the degree to which, firstly, medical assistance in dying has become so normalized in the culture that a fast fashion brand feels the need to align its values to it.
It's like Timbits hockey. Like, take your son to the rink, get a box of Timbits, and then euthanize grandma on the way home.
Like, you could picture terminally ill grandpa taking his son for their last Timbits and coffee before he pulls the cord. Like,
oh boy.
Like, that's kind of where this is going, and that's messed up. I'm sorry, that's messed up. Like,
I never watched Futurama, but they had disintegration boxes, right? Like, I think in the show Futurama in the future, you could just, like, on the street, it was like phone booths. You could just walk into it, activate it, and just be vaporized.
Yeah, and also very seriously, like, if you make this about sort of a cultural value, for example, like in Canada, we support medical assisted death and suicide, and this is just such an ingrained cultural value now that we even make commercials about it, and this is part of our national identity. It really makes it impossible, in the same way, for example, that we've done for national or our healthcare system. Like, this is
our heritage.
Part of our heritage, exactly, heritage moment. If you do that to it, as we've seen with the healthcare system, it becomes an impossible issue to debate, because you're no longer debating a subject or a matter, you're debating a value system, right? And that's, I think, where this gets fucked up, and where you shouldn't. This medical assisted dying, I actually, I would support it in certain cases, as I have said, but I would have a real problem with pinning a national or collective identity to the fact that this is permitted here, because bluntly, we're already starting to get into some real dark dystopian territory. And on that note, I will give some credit to Theo Raj from The Star, who had this really interesting piece in the start of this week where she had interviewed David Lametti, the Attorney General, and she was talking to him about medical assistance in dying. And she's like, look, are you, basically raising some of the concerns I am. Like, is this, is it really good that we're considering offering this to someone who is mentally ill? And he said something to the effect of, I'm not quoting directly here. Well, you have to remember these people all have access to suicide. And of course, all the suicide prevention people were like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, firstly, we've gone to great lengths to draw a distinction between medical assistance and dying and suicide. These are not the same things, even though, aren't they? But anyway, these are not the same things. And also the fact that you're now sloughing off real ethical concerns with expanding access to this service by basically being like, well, you people can off yourselves anyway. That just indicates a degree of moral slippery slope that's happening within the minds of our leaders. It's getting us into some really, really shady fucking territory real fast.
I don't know if this is better or worse, but I don't even know if it's moral slippery slope. It's judicial slippery slope. Because the original MAiD law in I think it was 2015, I support fully. 100%. Basically you need to have two doctors agree, and your death had to be reasonably foreseeable, and you had to have I don't remember the exact term, but some kind of significant suffering.
Look, when these children infect me with a terminal illness, okay, I'm on my deathbed, I want to go buy a nice easy dose of morphine. I get it. I can relate to that.
No, and I will actually go so far as to say that I am, or at least I was, when this was a live debate, I was among the more outspoken Canadian columnists in saying we need this. And the reason we need this is because your opinion on God should not trap me with terminal bone cancer.
Yeah, but I was also sympathetic to the argument that came from the conservative side that was like, look, if you start offering medical assistance in dying, what you're actually going to cut off is sensible palliative care.
Yep.
And this is also going to be a slippery slope. And everybody's like, slippery slope. That's a bad fallacy. And lo and behold, several years later,
but is it a slippery slope? Is it a slippery slope, or is the Supreme Court just dynamiting the hillside?
Maybe it's both. But I'm just saying, like now we have multiple cases of, for example, suffering veterans being told by Veterans Affairs Canada considered medical assistance in suicide. We have multiple cases of people who can't access basic services or can't get access to surgeries, now contemplating medical assistance in suicide. And a lot of the stuff is quite opaque. How many of these people are coming to media because they couldn't get it? And how many people are actually getting it on these grounds?
And we never hear from them.
Right? It's not like there's been anywhere near enough accountability about who is actually successfully using this service and for what reasons. There just hasn't been. And that is another huge problem with where we are right now, because it has allowed the blowing up of the hillside to occur. So I really think that we should be doing more following of this particular issue, because I think it's getting real weird.
Let me give you the self-interested, from my perspective, and I guess yours as well, reason to do this as well. If we don't reestablish a defensible frontier on MAiD, we might lose it.
Yeah,
we could get to the point where one too many veteran gets the needle because they couldn't get affordable housing, and the public just turns against this, and then some guy with inoperable brain tumors spends his final 3 months in agony because the public soured on it. And I think we need I fully support a euthanasia system that is reasonably accessible, but we have to find a way to make this work. And the other thing on the mental health side as well, I was speaking just a few weeks ago on my radio show with a mental health advocate, and we had a really interesting conversation of how is the government going to advance these two narratives simultaneously. Narrative one, if you are grievously suffering, we will aid your death. And also, hang on, don't do it. It can get better. You're going to have, the entire suicide narrative in recent years has been, there's no shame in this. You have an illness. Talk to somebody. We can help you. There's always a better day coming. Don't do anything you can't undo.
And the vast majority of people who attempt suicide and don't succeed live to regret it, and go on to have happy lives, and very few cases of this are irredeemable.
Or here's a needle.
You've suffered long enough.
And I honestly, like, here's any, like, I'm pretty
and I'm sorry,
wide open.
If you think that in a couple of years, some 20-year-old girl with depression is not going to kill herself with government assistance, and someone
it won't
like
take 20 years.
No, it won't.
Not on the trajectory we're on.
No, it'll in 5. If you think that that's not going to happen,
then it could be a lot sooner than that.
I know it could be a lot sooner, but if you think that that's not going to happen, given the trajectory we're on, given the track record we are on, and then you're going to have someone like MAiD be like, well, she could have killed herself anyway. Like that controversy is coming. That is very foreseeable in the near future. And if that happens, that will turn the public on medical assistance and dying. Coming. I guarantee you it's coming.
What we should probably do, and again, I'm saying this explicitly as someone who's pro-MAiD and would push for a really liberal, not politically intended, a very broad and accessible euthanasia regime. That would be my preference. We should go talk with someone who's a legal expert, because I'm honestly wondering, and I hate to use this term again because it gets us in trouble. Do we need a government with the balls to notwithstanding clause a more defensible frontier on MAiD? I don't know if, like, the notwithstanding clause only applies in some narrow circumstances. So we have to go find a legal expert here.
Yeah, could you notwithstanding clause this? That's actually an interesting question, because I don't think it has to do with charter rights.
Well, there are only parts of the charter where the notwithstanding clause applies, and I don't know where the MAiD
notwithstanding clause actually counts here. I think that MAiD has to do with criminal law, doesn't it? And you can't notwithstanding clause criminal law, can you?
The reason we have euthanasia, though, Jen, is because there were appeals on the grounds that lack of it was unconstitutional. That the lack of a MAiD regime was a violation of charter rights. So there was a charter angle to get us here. And now I wonder if there's a notwithstanding clause way to get us back to something more defensible.
I don't know, but that's an interesting question. That's a really interesting question.
All right, you know what? Anyway, I mean, let's put a pin on that. I don't know if we'll get.
I even just to write about the Simon's ad and just talk about.
Yeah.
There's a problem with turning this into such an ironclad, deep, big national identity issue that we can no longer actually debate it or dissent from it in any meaningful way. And that prevents meaningful and serious reform for a service that, or a regime that actually might be rapidly problematic.
Timbits.
Yeah.
Chalet sauce.
Death.
Death.
You can literally, where I live, you can go get your Timbits and your Swiss Chalet and your medically assisted dying within walking distance. It's great. I love my neighborhood.
And to round out the list, also ketchup, chips, and Smarties.
Brilliant. You could surround your hospital bed with the classics of Canadian culture on your way out in your healthcare system, in your taxpayer funded healthcare system. It's amazing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, if we actually had good satirists in this country, that would be the skit.
You could get your playlist going. It's all Rush, Tragically Hip, Celine Dion.
I'm telling you, like, if we were working for the Beaverton or something, or like, what, this hour is 22 minutes.
Yeah, and David Lametti's the guy pushing the plunger. All right. He already
Trudeau shows up in socks.
Yeah, or like
singing Gordon Downey song too, or something.
Well, honestly, Trudeau just
starts reading you Gordon Downey's like book about Wenjack.
Well, Trudeau just did the drag queen thing. I don't remember what it was called, Drag Race or something.
Yeah, Drag Race. We very pointedly did not talk about that because that shit's bait.
Oh, that's culture war bait for sure. And you and I immediately saw that. No. But his next guest appearance can be on Grandma's MAiD. Shows up with a beaver tail and a box of Timbits.
Yeah.
The doctor who gets your consent does it in both official languages. Are you now choking from your laughter because your lungs suck?
Yeah.
You know, I believe under the current legislation, you now qualify for MAiD. I don't think I've ever actually reduced you to giggles before.
We're good people. We're very nice people. Anyway, moving on to the next issue.
Well, you know what? Some kid's going to get MAiD soon and we're going to look terrible. But until
this is going to be used against us.
Podcast listeners, I just want to say those who watched the video version of this got the better experience because Jen has had her microphone off and she's just dying in the background.
Yeah.
Not literally, although that can change.
Slam the Celine Dion. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Going out with some Tom Sawyer ketchup chips and a visit from David Lametti. Look, the Lametti people already don't like me. I have no we covered that last
I wonder
week.
Why? I wonder why they couldn't.
All right. Moderately less depressing.
Now I'm going to be silly for the rest of the podcast. I'm just warning you.
Well, hang on. Moderately less depressing. Okay. I need to go. It was Robson Fletcher at CBC Calgary. Good dude, good journalist. Currently on paternity leave. And he just tweeted he was looking through the recent long form census at employment among journalists. You and I have written a couple of explainer pieces at the Line where we've tried to tell people the reason you need the Line right now is because there are no journalists left. One of the things he hasn't done.
It's just I'm half on my way out.
Yeah, I know. You're in your waiting period.
If I knock off the per capita number of journalists in Alberta is going to go down by 25%. You'll see it statistically.
He popped out a couple of charts, but he didn't provide the raw numbers. So I got to go text him and ask for those, or I got to go read.
Because the actual overall numbers have remained relatively stable. I think it's something like 10,000. But of course,
there's 10,000 working journalists in Canada today.
Yeah, and I think that number's been stable for quite a while. But of course, that's as population's been increasing, right? And the actual number of outlets has also been declining.
Man, let me.
So it's fewer journalists per capita in fewer outlets.
Well, podcast listeners and video watchers, forgive me here. I'm just literally pulling up the charts right now. So what is the actual number of working journalists in? Is that one of the charts he had? Or they're all? No, unfortunately, all the charts, are showing per capita. So I can't tell you what the actual numbers are, but the per capita numbers are pretty bleak. Journalism is hollowing out in this country. We have told people this before, Jen, because we have made the argument to them that if you value journalism, you have to directly support it. The traditional economic model that funded journalism throughout the 20th century has been destroyed. And there probably will eventually be a successor model, but we don't have it yet. We're in that interregnum period where the choices the people have is the government will subsidize the media for you, and you won't get any say with it, or you'll be able to pick which media you directly support. The Line is directly supported by its readership and its listenership. So if you value what we do, please subscribe today. We're going to have a fundraiser sometime in the coming week, so we can have some fun with that. Maybe you can chip us a few extra bucks. But what I will say, one of the other things Robson grabbed is not just the per capita decline in journalists, growing population, but a shrinking number of working journalists. The wages are down sharply. And this is something else. Down sharply.
I mean, the other interesting thing. Yeah, you and I knew that. The other thing that I would point out here is that if you're looking at journalists per capita, he points out that there are, on a per capita basis, half as many journalists as 2001. But that's also in part because we're the highest population growth. I think one of the highest growth populations in the country.
Oh, Alberta specifically?
In Alberta specifically. Yeah. So our growth rates for our overall population are so high that our journalists have not kept up, not because there has been a massive layoff necessarily in the province, although there have certainly been layoffs and reductions. So it's an interesting thing, and I wonder what this other province is here.
I will go try and find the numbers raw, and then
because I'm willing to bet that, for example, like Ontario would be another example where the per capita numbers declined very rapidly, simply because it hadn't kept up the population growth. You know what I mean?
I actually, what I'm curious about, once I've seen the raw numbers, I'm curious. A lot of newspaper editorial functions and broadcast editorial functions have been centralized in Toronto.
Yes.
So
you're right. So you might not have that.
The Ontario number may look healthier than you'd think, but what those are is there's sort of there's a number of journalists based in facilities in mostly Toronto, but Post Media has a big one in Hamilton. That are doing the jobs of what used to be local jobs everywhere else in the country.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell me, we got to wrap this up pretty soon, just because I've got to get on the road. I'm out of town
Yes,
this
and
weekend.
I've got to head out soon as well. So
The Americans have noticed our media subsidies. While we're on the topic,
yes.
tell me
So
about that.
yeah. So I mean, you know that C18 and to a lesser extent C11 has definitely been my wheelhouse. So the U.S. ambassador has basically pointed out that some of the subsidies that the government wants to give to Canadian media presents a trade issue. It's unfairly subsidizing Canadian media outlets to the disadvantage and detriment of other countries' medias that also work within this space, which is really interesting because I mean, firstly, we know that, for example, that the New York Times has done phenomenally well in Canada. I don't know what the raw numbers are offhand, but I can find them. But I think that they might actually be one of the most popular newspapers in Canada.
Oh,
And we know,
hey, I
yeah,
subscribe to it.
yeah, and also I don't know if physical, no, I'm talking about digital, right? And the other interesting thing is, of course, we have very frequently have international organizations expand their reaches in Canada. BBC is now on a big hiring front as well.
BBC,
So it's an
Reuters,
interesting argument. Yeah, it definitely raises trade issues, and that's in addition to all of the other problems that the bills present. But on the flip side of that, I mean, we know also that a lot of these major organizations also have kind of secret deals with some of these major tech companies. So whether or not, but now they're not necessarily government mandated, but you know, there's been some pat on the back money's been circulating around on a lot of different fronts. So I know it could be interesting to delve into. I don't think it's worth a huge dispatch, but just because C18 has been on my wheelhouse and my radar, I think I probably want to note that as well.
Last but not least, okay, first of all, I'm going to sneak in one that wasn't on the list,
Okay,
but I'll do this
go.
really briefly just because it amuses me. The Liberals federally have had another anti-Semitic incident.
Oh, another one.
Yeah. So at some event, I'm just pulling up the details now. It was the Canada Palestine Parliamentary Friendship Group, and some Liberal MPs were there, including the Transport Minister Omar Alagbra, and turns out one of the guests is just like a fire-breathing, Jew-hating anti-Semite. So the minister has this statement out. I'm going to read this to you, Jen. This event was a parliamentary friendship group event that included MPs and members of the Palestinian community from across the country. What this individual said is offensive and anti-Semitic and must be condemned. Anti-Semitism is real, and I will continue to call it out whenever I see it. Including, I just thought to myself, including at the events that I'm at, where the anti-Semites are right in front of me.
I mean, did he actually say anything at the event when this thing, like, did the anti-Semite say anything?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to go do the research.
I don't know. If the guy just shows up to an event and some anti-Semite happens to be there, this is the same thing, the same bullshit that, you know, you're getting Polyev because what's his face, the Diagolon group.
I think it was an invite only group to Parliament.
I
will go.
Fair enough. I mean, like, I'm just saying, just like, okay, somebody gets invited to an event and he's an asshole and he shouldn't have been there. I don't know. Is that?
I will go find out. But
yeah,
one conservative friend of mine joked, you know, because this is coming obviously on the heels of that rabid anti-Semite
who got a big stuff, who got a big government contract. Now that's a totally different kettle of fish for sure.
Now we have this, and one of my friends joked Trudeau's next public event, he's going to come out to pumping Kanye music. So, all right, now that was all I wanted to mention. I will do the legwork on getting the details on this one. You want to take a pot shot at Ontario?
Yeah, basically, some random dude on Twitter was like, "I've left."
I'm okay. Just so you know, I'm ready to hit Alberta back, but go for it.
Okay, sure. So some random dude on Twitter basically sends out this very, very popular tweet, and he says, "I left Ontario 3 months ago, and I have to be honest, like, your population is not well. Like, you people are deranged. Like, the rest of the world has moved on. Nobody's wearing masks. You guys are just you're fucked. You're mentally fucked." And I think that he might be right.
He's wrong.
Okay.
Parts of Toronto Twitter are like that. The rest of the province isn't. And this is where this is where I fire back. Alberta's fucked.
Oh, Alberta's fucked politically, but we've always been fucked politically.
No, you're differently fucked now. You're only fucked politically because there's a sizable portion. I've had some version like 3 or 4 times in the last 2 weeks talking with Albertans, and I was teasing you about this a few weeks ago. Albertans don't know what Ontario is. They know what they think it is.
Hey, I'm just quoting the super popular dude, man. On Twitter.
But Yeah, but okay, but here's the thing. Danielle Smith knows there's a constituency for her Alberta Sovereignty Act. And you wrote your column on Thursday where you basically said this is a signal to the batshit fringe of her base.
Yeah.
That dude's tweet is the exact same thing. It is appealing to the Albertan desire to think that Ontario is what it isn't, because you guys need something to rally against, or else you'd turn on yourselves.
But this wasn't a tweet aimed at Albertans. It was a tweet.
No, but an Albertan sent it to me.
Yeah, you. but that's only because like you're crazy, and I just like to point out that you're crazy to you. It's just fun. Anyway, look, I'm open to some possibilities here, but I think that we should leave this to our readers and our audience. Like, is Ontario okay? Are you guys okay? And I would just be interested.
We're not less okay than the rest of y'all.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I think maybe all of Canada's not okay. Maybe we're all fucked. But anyway, look, we're not worse off than China.
Okay, but what is the craziest province in Canada right now, just in terms of the population? I don't think it's Ontario.
I think it's probably Ontario. I think COVID broke. I think Ontario has always disproportionately attracted, especially Toronto, has always disproportionately attracted type A personalities with a high degree of neuroses and perfectionism and control issues.
Quebec simply because had curfews, and you have a Sovereignty Act.
Yeah, but now we're talking politics. We're not curfews, and not the curfews. I'm saying that Ontario has always attracted a disproportionately higher number of neurotic people by virtue of the fact that it is the economic powerhouse
and the financial capital. Yeah,
and the financial capital. A certain type of personality tends to disproportionately settle in Toronto. It's not the type of personality who's like, fuck it, I'm gonna go get my Timbits, and I'm gonna get my Timbits and then kill myself. You know what I mean? Like,
get made.
Like, and I think the pandemic has particularly twigged to neurotic personality types. I think that there might be something to that. So maybe we're not talking Ontario, maybe we're talking Toronto specifically. Maybe. And I'm not, the Sovereignty Act is representative of like the 1% of Albertans who voted Danielle Smith in. Like, I don't know what to say.
Okay,
I get it. Always been fucked in its own special French way.
I'm gonna say this to you. We both look. You never smell your own house.
No, I think Alberta is hilariously fucked up, but not in that way. I don't think its people are broken.
Okay.
I think its politics is hilarious. Is a telenovela. It's a bad joke, but the people are okay.
Alberta is currently a battle between right-wing people who've gone crazy and left-wing people who are humiliated that their province has gone crazy.
Yeah, I think that represents like 10% of the population. Both of those groups represent 10% of the population.
Yeah, but how many people are masking in Ontario? Like, well, it's less than 10%.
I think it's a really interesting question. Can we have some data? Like, I don't know. Like, I look, I'm just going to put it out there. I want to put the tweet in the dispatch, and I want to ask for the response because I'm not in Ontario, so I don't know. But I'd like to ask for the see how people, obviously this tweet got like 10,000 likes almost. So people connected to it, and a lot of Ontarians seem to agree with them. Just saying. A tweet like that about Alberta, I don't think would get that kind of traction.
Because you don't smell your own house.
And yet lots of Ontarians seem to agree with this guy, and I don't think Albertans are broken. I think that our politics is a disaster, but like as people are fine.
Remember all those sugar flowers you put on the cake?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not saying I'm not fine. Nobody ever, but I'm not the baseline. I'm a wingnut. I'm a lunatic. What, are we making me the baseline of fine now? That's unwise.
I think Alberta exists in opposition to an Ontario it imagines exists.
I think Alberta exists in opposition to Quebec.
No, I think increasingly you exist in bromance with Quebec.
Yeah, but that's the dark heart of opposition, right? Like I think that Quebec is the province we compare ourselves to, not Ontario.
Who is the Eastern bastard in the Albertans' mind?
I think that's just a collection of everything east of Thunder Bay. Just except for the Atlantic provinces, they get a pass, but they don't really count as east.
Well, let's put it to the readers then.
Okay, well, I think we should just put it to the readers. Are you okay, Ontario?
No. I don't
Okay?
think that's what we put to the readers. I think we put to the readers something more basic. Which province has gone nuttier the last 3 years?
I think they've just gone nutty. Like they're different ways. They're different. No, I don't think that's what he's saying. I don't think that's a representation of the tweet.
No, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, like politically, I think Alberta is absolutely nutty. But like I said, I don't think that means that its people are unwell. I think that this guy was pointing out that Ontarian people don't seem well.
But who does he mean?
I think he's speaking in abstraction, which is why I think that it's worth. I think it's just worth asking. Let's just put the tweet out there. And let's ask for responses, and we will run the best ones and most interesting insights in the future dispatch.
If you want to do that this week, I will indulge that because I am a very good work husband and an indulgent co-editor.
But also, you're not broken.
I'm going to propose at some point soon for fun. We solicit essays from every province in the Federation where someone within it argues that one of the other provinces has gone batshit.
Sure. Yeah.
Basically, we'll call it the National Unity Crisis series, where we do our damnedest to get every province in this country angry at the other ones.
Yes, that's good. That's good. We're going to foment a national unity crisis. It's perfect.
So the last 3 years, the Atlantic Canadians have been pretty chill.
They've been cool. They've been fine.
Quebecers have been baseline bizarre. Ontarians got COVID panicky and then it hit their limit and shook it off. I don't know what the Manitobans are doing.
No one ever knows what the Manitobans are doing. Nobody pays attention to Manitoba.
The Saskatchewaners seem weird, but there's not many of you. Sorry. The BC guys seem kind of within their usual wheelhouse. Alberta's gone weird.
Alberta's definitely politically gone weird. But Alberta weirdness politically is baseline. Alberta's been weird politically for 100 years.
So you think your politics are completely detached to your society in a way that like your society is just totally going on totally normally, but your politics has gone nuts?
I think that's there is
any other jurisdiction would you buy that?
Okay. I think that's a complicated question, a complicated answer that I literally don't have time to answer right now. I've got to go. Because
you're crazy.
Well, all right. I'm crazy.
All right. Why don't you write this up the way you want, and then on next week I'll write it up the way I want.
All right, deal.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye, crazy Jen.
Goodbye, crazy Matt. You're doing fine.
I'm doing my best.
There's no shame. There's no shame in asking for help to end your life.
Well, hey, you're the only one on that glide path already. You'll have to pry myself from my cold dead hands, which isn't necessarily the mental image I wanted to leave people with, but what can you do? Bye-bye.
No, you definitely want to aim for autoerotic asphyxiation before you go. Sorry, we're bad. Anyone who's
honestly, if we ever run out of the MAiD drugs, that'll be the backup plan. The government will help you autoerotically asphyxiate yourself.
Oh my god, yes, because we will run out of MAiD drugs, because of course we will. We have a shortage of everything else.
Of everything, yeah. That'll be when the real panic sets in.
Everything's fine.
Things are great. See ya.
Bye.